Between 1950 and 2000, basically 85% to 90% of Fortune 500 companies gone, turned over, absolutely don't exist anymore. And so that to me is always an indication that they are not in tune with next generation trends, preferences, goals. There's so many important things that come out of the students that are graduating from schools that stick with them as they build their career and ultimately take over the business environment.
Hello, welcome to EdTech Leaders. I'm excited to welcome today Jordan Levy, the CEO and co-founder of CapSource. CapSource is leading a shift in higher education by embedding real-world industry projects into curricula to boost student outcomes. Welcome, Jordan.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me, Oliver.
Yeah, thanks so much. Tell us why real-world experience is so important for students today.
Well, certainly today, even more than ever before, because the price of education is higher than it's ever been. There's more college educated students than there ever has been. So you're graduating and competing with more, educated individuals out there. And AI is here, and if you don't know how to use it to actually move the needle for real stakeholders, then how are you going to survive in the workplace and use that degree to earn at least enough money to pay back the costs that it was required for you to get through it? So I think those are some big reasons why we really believe in this model. I've always believed that the higher ed industry was going to head in the direction of really accelerating student talent by accelerating businesses and partnerships with real organizations, for-profit, nonprofit, small, big, local mom and pops, startups. It doesn't really matter what type of organization, as long as what you're doing doesn't get deleted and thrown into the garbage afterwards. I think your college education is much more worth it.
So tell us how this works. How do you partner with institutions in higher education, and how do you find industry partners?
So industry has been collaborating with higher ed in various different ways, applied research, all sorts of interesting things ever since the inception of higher ed. In the 80s and 90s, it started taking off in a new format where accreditors like ABET, which is the accreditor for engineering programs, required a certain amount of applied learning hours in order to get a bachelor's degree. So the concept of a capstone actually came to fruition, where students, instead of taking a traditional class with a textbook and random deliverables, students were actually expected to work with a real company on a real project. We basically support those programs and diversify that approach so that students can get these experiences as much and as often and as impactfully as possible throughout an entire degree program, regardless of discipline. If it's engineering students, great. There's a large, model and structure that has been developed over years to do manufacturing, uh, uh, chemical engineering, mechanical, so on and so forth. There's also business students. They also are interested in doing real projects with startups, mom and pops, larger enterprises, marketing, analytics, um, you know, uh, strategy, management, finance, and accounting. So all of these disciplines, we can go. We've done work in public administration with NYU for the last 5 years. They are interested in urban planning projects and finance and accounting for nonprofits and public policy and advocacy. So there's really if you have a discipline, a degree program pathway where students are hoping to be employed afterwards, that is in some way that's relevant to what you taught them, there has to be employers out there willing to do projects. In fact, we think it's a leading indicator of whether or not you're training students in a discipline that has higher ability after graduation. So all we do is take the requirements from schools. They say, we want one company to work with 250 of our students on a project related to marketing. or we want a company in our backyard to work with our students on something more bespoke to our region. And we take those requirements and we reach out to industry partners, showcase the program's capability, program's configuration, the students' capabilities, and then organize introductions, which lead to scope projects that are scheduled to launch and run, just like a normal class would, except much more interactive and current.
And you have a platform as well, correct?
Yeah, so, we originally started by just asking schools, "Hey, what are the types of things that you need in order to do more of this?" And most of the answers originally were, "Well, we need companies to commit to it." And so we kinda ran with that and said, "Okay, if that's what you need, we'll find the companies for you. Just tell us what you need." And so we started by doing that. We had pilots with schools all over the country, within the first couple of years. And then as we generated revenue, we said, what do we do to acquire more customers? We need to create more value for those collaborations. So we actually built a platform that first displayed much more clearly what the requirements were from the educators, what the goals, the teaching goals were, the structure of the class, and then expected benefits for industry, and then an intake process for companies, and then profiles for companies and students. And now we're integrating AI tools and project management tools and other, collaboration formats like mentoring and case studies and, job shadowing and guest lectures. So there's lots of ways that industry can interface with education, whether it's even middle and high school education in some cases, all the way through undergrad and grad, and more workforce development programming and boot camps. There's really no reason why all educational institutions that truly believe that they're training students for their careers and to build skill sets shouldn't be using this type of approach in a variety of different ways.
Cool. So you started as a matchmaker, finding companies that the colleges needed, universities needed, and then you added like a kind of a matchmaking platform in a way, and then built on that. So now you do project management as well. And can how does that work for a project? Tell us about that.
So, our project management suite of tools is generally designed around trying to help students keep track of what their priorities are based on the overall scope, and ultimately give feedback and data points to their project managers and program managers, their industry sponsors, and their faculty sponsors on what they're doing and when intervention is needed and when support is needed. So that's a big mechanism, is the feedback and evaluation mechanism. We're working on like a Kanban board kind of tracking of tasks and logging time so that we can get even more data from students, discussion boards and forums. Those are the types of things that we're introducing to the tool to help boost the effectiveness as an intermediary. Because really, in the beginning, it was like, this is a project scope, which we wrote without AI or any type of assistance. It was like, you know, took hours and we were sitting in between educators and institutions. And now with one sentence and a web domain, you can have project ideas, project scopes developed with AI in our tool in seconds. So really, like, the tech has evolved so much, even over the last couple of years, to just structure our process to make it more scalable and effective as an intermediary. But then the key is like, okay, now what value do we provide to our stakeholders? And it's really, how do we credential them afterwards? How do we help them recognize the skills and expertise that they gained, tools that they learned, disciplines that they have more clout in? Those are the types of things that we're trying to do through our tool, and ultimately through our profiles and our integrations with other tools.
That's cool. Are you able to track the students after they finish the programs in any way, or um,
It's such a good question. Honestly, no. I wish we were able to track them much better. Most students don't use their university emails afterwards. So getting
right?
them to respond to their to evaluations that have longer tails to get them to debrief, We're working on trying to enhance it. We're working on trying to do more LinkedIn integration, so that we can actually keep track and keep profiles updated, which is a big initiative that we're working on over the next year. But yeah, it's a really, proving that that outcome to the schools proves to be a rather difficult piece, but something that we know is so valuable, right? Like if you, I mean, to me, it seems pretty obvious that giving students industry experience gets them more prepared for industry. I think that that seems like an obvious, thing, but ultimately measurable in graduation rates, student satisfaction, student retention rates, employability after graduation, and earning potential. Those are the 5 stats that schools really care about, but they can't even track those very well. So
Mm.
that's really, like, one of the things that I hope, will be a part of our platform and maybe our overall value proposition as we get better at building the tech to support that type of tracking and reporting.
Cool. And on the employer side, the institutions that are working with you on these industry projects, are you getting feedback from them? I mean, are they hiring some of these students? Are they actually solving some of their problems? What's their feedback?
De Definitely solving problems, coming up with innovative solutions and ideas. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I've been absolutely floored along with industry partners on what students come up with. One of my favorite, data points to prove that and just kind of emphasize the importance of always collaborating with the next generation, between 1950 and 2000, basically 85% to 90% of Fortune 500 companies gone, turned over, absolutely don't exist anymore. And so that to me is always an indication that they are not in tune with next generation trends, preferences, um, goals. There's so many important things that come out of the students that are graduating from schools that stick with them as they build their career and ultimately take over the business environment. So, yeah, you might be a powerhouse today, but if you don't continue to invest in your employer brand, your talent pipeline, and your innovation pipeline from next generation, it's just, a couple of years of missed goals and you are no longer a powerhouse industry organization. So there's certainly insights that come out of it. One of the interesting things about this approach, so internships are actually designed by companies for companies. This approach is actually designed for schools with companies for students,
Hmm.
right? So they are actually, their posture is not as a candidate and it's not as an intern, it's actually as a student, a learner.
Hmm.
So for us, the cherry on top is when students get hired, but it is not actually a way that we directly incentivize company participation. If we have freshmen and sophomores doing projects, they're not even employable for another 2 years, right? So,
Hmm.
like, in theory, they shouldn't even be part of our calculation because the expectation right now is that we want them to finish that degree or else the school would never use our service,
Right.
as a platform because now they just lost. If we have a freshman that does such a good job that they get hired, they lose 75% of the revenue they were supposed to get. Maybe that is a disruptive model that could be worth it, right? But the reality is that we're trying to help students get ready for the workplace. And if we find that that serendipitous match between the organization and student is so positive, then ultimately they get job offers. We had competition last week. A student got a job offer during the middle of the meeting. I actually retained two. I do a capstone computer science program with my alma mater, Lehigh, every year. Done it for 6 years now. I had the most effective group I've ever worked with. Two of them asked me to stick on and continue working on their project to help implement it and bring it to fruition over the course of the next 6 months. So it's there as a model. And one of the things that we hope for is that as the model scales, then that matching in particular interest. Like we're doing more co-ops, more internships through our platform than we had previously been doing through our more curricular focused programming. And that's really double opt-in, right? Students have to apply, organizations have to accept, and you really want to make sure that those are really matched well, as opposed to if you're doing a competition as part of your marketing class, it's not necessarily as important that those students are saying, "Yeah, I really want to work at True Religion Jeans after this because I did it in my marketing class." But certainly, there's a higher likelihood that they would be interested now that they've studied it in depth and have some insights on the business model.
Yeah. And they're getting exposure to see if they even like, certain industry as well. So there's value in that.
It's the industry, it's the disciplines, it's the individual mentors and network connections. And then, we're talking earlier today about how a lot of how people make hiring decisions is like, okay, these candidates are qualified based on their domain expertise and skill sets, but they actually get hired because of their personal interests and culture fit. So we're starting to try and identify ways to help companies use some of the students' more broad profile and interests to kind of drive that connection and get that student more into a position to get hired.
But that's really interesting because there's a big shift in attitudes toward higher education right now. Some people are like, well, if you're not training for specific jobs, what's the point? At the same time, industry is changing. Technology is changing so much that there are broad attributes of the ability to think, being flexible, that are important. How do you see the value in higher education today? And what's the right role of higher education?
Well, my main thing is flexibility in what, right? Because if it's flexibility within an environment that has no real stakes or no real world application, then that's not flexible. That's just fake. I mean, that's just we're not that is not training real skills. Like I don't think that and one of the things is like, people are like, same thing that you kind of mentioned. It's like, oh, you're not training. Like if we do that, then we're kind of selling out to the companies and, you know,
Hmm.
we're not like living up to the expectation that it's about thinking more broadly and building students up so that they could be more successful thinkers and strategists and collaborators. You can't be a good one of those if you do projects without real stakes. And so for me, it's always about, and you could work with nonprofits. I mean, I can't even tell you how many organizations that are trying to provide access to clean water, access to food for those in needs, uh, help with fundraising tools for nonprofits. Like there's literally an unlimited amount of need within the nonprofit sector. And tell me that's not a good service, a corporate responsibility for nonprofit institutions to serve the nonprofits in their communities. Like that to me is like low hanging fruit. Service learning, why not? It's a great way to kill three birds with one stone. You get a chance to educate the students, you get to make an impact, you have to keep the institutional relationships growing with these organizations or alumni and the local community. So, and then that only makes it more successful for that school. So for me, it's like really a triple win, quadruple win for all of the different stakeholders involved. I think that's what higher ed is about. I think that for a long time we've been, um, for better or worse, we basically through the access to funding in the 90s and 80s, 90s, and early 2000s to be able to take a massive loan out to go to school became basically an expectations of those who want to be able to access the American dream versus those who are never going to be able to make enough money to really break through to the middle class or upper class. And so somehow the university system put themselves in the middle of that. Good for them. Now it's a lot more complicated, right? They lost trust, they lost momentum with funding not being nearly as accessible and major bubble of student debt crisis. And there was an article today about what percent, it's a massive percentage of people of loan holders that are either defaulting or delinquent. And it's like, of course they are, because they didn't even get a chance to validate that what they were trying to study was actually going to contribute to their career. So for me, it's really about actually serving that mission and doing so in a way that's academic. I'm not saying take out all of the academic perspective that goes along with these types of things. Like apply your marketing theory, apply your management, leadership, communication, digital technology. posture. There's cybersecurity. You can literally look at organizations in a million and one ways. You're just teaching students to use the skills directly over and over for real organizations, real stakeholders, by the way, who are very complicated, right? Trying to serve a master, trying to serve a leader, a manager is not the same as trying to serve a professor, right? So if the professor is the manager leader, then ultimately they are the ones that hold all the cards. They're the ones who hold all the knowledge. And that's the only stakeholder that matters. But if you say, hey, by the way, it's very different when a company has a leader who's distracted, who's human, who's trying to figure out their business, and you're not adding enough value or you're not clearly enough communicating, then you're going to learn very quickly how that is so important in order to make yourself successful. So the last piece I'll add here is that I think the changing environment in higher ed is it started with adjunctification and the decrease. I mean, the grants and research is down significantly with the Trump administration. There's going to be a new renaissance of the structure and approach for how to teach students. And it started with COVID, and now the coffin is being pinned with AI and a massive shortage of students that want the contemporary version of higher education. And I think the schools that rise to the occasion and say, I get that students don't want to pay that much money just to be able to access the gym, be a part of a fraternity, and go to a bunch of classes that have simulations and textbooks. They want more than that. They want to build a resume. They want to build connections that are going to last them a lifetime. They want to build employability and earning potential. And I don't see any way to do that with any method other than direct collaboration with the outside organizations that hire your students, that buy from your students, that support your students financially, that build products for your students. There's literally no other option.
Yeah. I think sometimes there's confusion, you think about it, between um, you go to school, you learn a very broad education, or you learn a specific skill that you could just learn on YouTube. But what you're pointing out is that a lot of what you're learning in real world projects are actually soft skills that do make you flexible, so that if you work with a company and you know how to deal with the boss, you know how to collaborate with other people, yes, you're learning specific marketing skills or engineering skills, but you're also learning those soft skills that allow you to shift if you do need to change industries.
Yeah, we have we created it's called the experiential learning framework, but it's basically an entire map that discusses like what you get out of investing energy into this, both as a school and outcomes for your students, industry, outcomes for your business and your talent pool, and then students as learners and potential talent, right? And so NACE, which is the National Association for Collegiate Employers, published a framework probably 10 years ago that talks about the 8 competencies that students need regardless of what industry they enter. And we know for sure that every single project that is done on our platform requires the use of all 8. It's things like communication, critical thinking, teamwork, leadership, intercultural fluency, professional aptitude, career management, and digital technologies. Those are the 8 skills that if you're going to be a barber, if you're going to be a marketing strategist or a social media manager or a CEO of a startup, you need all of those skills. You have to have them, or else you're never going to make it through to the next level of earning and impact. And then the key is you use those skills to develop real insights for real stakeholders, and then those stakeholders give you feedback so that you leave with reference worthy experience. And reference worthy experience or resume worthy experience, however you want to frame it, is about sharing. It's reflecting on sharing and showcasing career readiness through network connections, real connections who could speak to your experience and capabilities, organizational knowledge. What do these orgs do and how are they organize and how do I get up to speed so that I could be impactful? And then outcomes and artifacts that prove your impact. Those are the types of things that students want and need out of their education experience. And the important thing to recognize is that ABET, which honestly was one of the most progressive accreditors with engineering students, saying, we don't want students building bridges if they've never worked for an organization before and done anything of real substance. We want them to at least have that in order for you to have a bachelor's degree stamped by our standard. Well, let me tell you something, right? At the end of the day, one experience is not nearly enough. They need 10, 20, 30 before they graduate, right? And there's a million internships, paid internships in the United States, and there's 20 million undergrad and grad students. And there's about 80 million people in the demographic of about 18 to 30 years old that are in that prime kind of either ready for undergrad or ready for grad. There's a massive that does not nearly enough capacity to train students real world. So there
Mm.
has to the school, that's my whole reason to exist, right? Is that the schools really need to serve as that capacity for the students and for the industry, right? The industry says your students aren't smart enough, they're not valuable enough in order for me to spend time with them. But you are trying to teach them. So I will help you teach your students about what I do, and you help teach the students about how to impact an organization and a an area like mine. And I think if schools get on board with that, industry is going to get on board with that. And now you really have an ecosystem that serves key stakeholders, all of those key stakeholders.
Mm. Really cool. How did you get involved? Clearly passionate about this. How did how did you come to create CapSource? What's your background?
So I was studying accounting and finance. I got a chance to get an internship. I did an externship my sophomore year going into junior year, and then junior into senior year, I got the internship in New York City at KPMG. And, I'll never forget, my mom used to ask me, how was work today? And I'd be like, it was fine. And she'd be like, what'd you eat for lunch? And I'd be like, oh, I went to this awesome sandwich spot or this Korean barbecue, or I went out with this guy. And like for me, my mom said, I knew you weren't going to make it because it wasn't interesting enough for you. And I was top performing student, summa cum laude. Like I got all the honors, A's in most of my classes, and still was graduating with no clue. I said, if I don't have a clue, what about every other student out there that gave half of the effort that I gave? There's no way they know. And the straw that broke the camel's back for me was it literally was just on the phone 10 minutes ago with my previous the one of the program leaders of the capstone program for business students at Lehigh. They're seriously still using the simulation that I used 11 years ago when I graduated college, which was based on developing desktop computers and created in like 2004,
Mhm.
2006, right? So this thing is like this old clunky simulation. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like we literally, this is a very expensive top tier institution. Why don't we have a chance to work with real companies? The engineering students are doing it. Why can't I? And I basically learned, it's a little bit more effort than it's worth putting into this course because no one really is taking care of these students. And I said, every single student I know that actually cares about their degree, cares about school, cares about their career, would love to work, even to support the pizza place off campus. I would have loved it. It's like, okay, I'll help you build a marketing plan. I'll help you build a better supply chain to get lower costs of materials. I'll help you build a strategy to help with advertising and social media. Like literally give me anything real and it would have been better than that experience. Because otherwise, now think about if I were in class now and someone gave me something that's not real, even real, I would use AI and it would take me, a fraction of the time it would have used to come up with a real strategy and impact. But now it's like if you're using a simulation, literally I use ChatGPT and AI for literally everything. Whether I'm trying to fix my pool, trying to fix my Eero internet mesh system, it's like, I don't want to call support. I want to use this. So it can literally walk you through step by step of what to do. Of course, it could do the same thing for a local pizzeria, right? So we need to teach these students how to use these tools so that they're employable. Because if they're graduating and they don't know how to use these tools, they're going to be so useless to these organizations. And that's what we're already seeing is a massive amount of layoffs in the tech sector where basically a team of engineers builds one integration with an AI that can do the job of thousands of people. So I think that that's the key for the future is, I care about learning. I think it's I care about learning. I care about people. I care about organizations that want to help people and want to help people learn and earn and be a part of a positive contributory economy and society. And I think, you know, it's like, the Jewish tradition, like making an introduction between a man and a woman to or whatever a couple to get married is like one of the biggest mitzvahs and one of the biggest good deeds. And if you do that in people's careers, it's really a good deed too. And for me, that's what energizes me. It's like if one student, and we've reached 30, 40,000 in my career, if one student gets on a pathway to change the world, that to me is worth it. And I think we have a lot more than one under our belt. And to me, that's why I come back and I get energized to do this every day. And I know the schools don't value this as much as they should. I know that they're not investing the resources that they should. And I know that there's a reckoning coming. But to me, that's the reason why I wake up every day and I say, schools, you got to do this. Companies, you got to do this. Students want this. Even if they don't even understand the importance now, by the end of these projects, it's proof that the educational experience works by seeing how much more mature, more professional, more skillful, communicative, professional. I mean, there's so many outcomes that are just so easy to track with these types of collaborations, and that's why I'm energized about this whole thing.
It's great. How do you get the word out about CapSource so you can spread the word and keep growing?
You know, I signed up for LinkedIn when I was in middle school as early as I was allowed to. So we very much use LinkedIn as a core tool and a tenant of our business and marketing, especially because like it's such a big presence on the industry side of our platform. I wish educators use it more. I wish students use it more. Mainly they don't because educators don't need a LinkedIn to build a good career in higher ed, which is sad. And I think they should. And there should be more of the platform designed for, the educators to build their portfolio and interact with their community. But the students don't use it because they don't have anything to put on their resume. I mean, they literally sometimes it's by the time they're senior year. I mean, literally, I graduated. I was a busboy at 14. I was a bartender, I was a camp counselor, and then a KPMG intern. Like, come on. Why don't I should have 8 things on my resume from college, right? And it's like not the accounting club, not the finance club, not the investment club, not I think these things, yes, they're great at rounding out the experience, but we can do so much better for students. So I get the word out. LinkedIn is a great place to find us. Our website is a wealth of knowledge. Um, and then we try to get to conferences as often as we can. If you want us to come speak, we love doing podcasts. We appreciate the opportunity to be on such a trailblazing education futurist type podcast with you, Oliver. So just let us know. I'm happy to be a resource, and we just want to see. I want to see the world just move in the right direction on this. And for me, it's worth every ounce of energy I've poured into it, and will pour into it for the rest of my career.
Yeah, it's great. What do you see? What are your goals for the next year or two?
I remember when we made a decision to build the tech product, it was really tough for us because we didn't have a technical co-founding team. We needed to build, and we don't have investors. We're all of our product has been co-created with our institutional partners and industry partners through revenue that we've generated through those partnerships. So we are a bootstrapped company. We are proud. We are employee owned and operated, and we are trying to really improve the product. We're trying to integrate AI all across every tool. When you create a mentorship engagement with someone, how we build that curriculum for you is for you. It's bespoke to you and your mentor. That is it. That is what we're doing. When we build projects, it's based on AI. When we grade students and provide them with feedback, when we help students come up with strategies to approach projects, when we build case studies for students to do asynchronous learning, when we structure guest lectures, all of these things should be AI integrated. And so that's one of the big things that the Lehigh team that I just mentioned was working on. And we actually like developed into our product as a proof of concept that has been awesome. And then otherwise, we want to grow. We're launching co-ops with Noodle, which is an amazing company that supports recruitment and programming for higher ed institutions. So definitely excited about that. And then otherwise, we're always interested in entering new fields and challenging our product team to adapt the tool to work for field placements, right? Like nursing, pharmacology, medicine, all of those types of fields that have mandatory service hours is like really for us low hanging fruit that because they have existing systems we haven't really approached much. But I really think that that's like a really interesting opportunity for us to like further develop our product to create more value for institutions because really our big vision is to be the center of industry collaboration for the school. And so that depending on your school, if you have a school of nursing and you have a school of business and engineering and public administration, you need a very intricate system that can help you organize those professional networks, those industry networks, and the experiences that the students are having and track the outcomes. So that's what we're building. And I think that schools need it. They've needed it for so long. I think platforms like Handshake just scratch the surface of what we're talking about here. And we're excited to compete, to come up with ways to help students get this experience that they desperately need and want.
That's great. How do people find out about you? Your website is
CapSource.io.
capsource.io. Thank you so much for coming today, Jordan Levy, CEO and co-founder of CapSource.
Thanks,
Thank
Al. It
you.
was a great time. Really appreciate the great questions and the chance to talk about what we're doing and what we hope for the future.
Absolutely. Go check out CapSource and please subscribe to EdTech Leaders. Thanks and talk soon.